everyone, and welcome to Out on a Limb podcast with your hosts, Will, Allison, and not Samantha. As you may have noticed, we have a special guest in studio today, Tobi Elbel, who has been here before. She's a two-time guest on our podcast.
Hey.
For a number of reasons. First of all, because of the subject matter, because we're going to talk about her sigils and her inspiration and all of the things that have transpired with the three of us in regards to the origin story. So we're going to talk about that today. And also, it's been a little challenging because of the holiday with Samantha's schedule and our schedule. And we really like Samantha to be here in person. But because she comes from Hilton Head, which is a couple of hours away, it can be a little bit challenging. So we thought this was perfect to give her a break and to have Tobi to come in and chat directly to you guys about the sigils and how all of that works and how she gets downloads and fun stuff like that. So welcome. It's for you Wednesday, a couple of weeks prior to Christmas.
Yep.
So I have my Christmas lights, which are a couple of years old and they no longer light, but if you can tell, that's what this is.
We're in the spirit.
Right.
Very cheery.
And this episode will air a couple of weeks before Christmas. So I thought I'd get into the
holiday spirit.
Christmas spirit.
That's
yeah.
Right.
All right. So the first thing we want to talk about really is kind of the history. As you know, or may not know, we recently published our workbook. It goes along with the origin story book. It's a companion guide to help you as you're reading through the origin story. Because the material is so dense, I mean, it's not impossible to get through. It's really it's easily digestible, but you have to kind of chunk it up. And there's just so much information that it is helpful to stop and think and integrate rather than reading it straight through.
Yes. Yes.
And so we thought this was a really good way to either have book clubs together if you wanted to order a copy and get together on your own with friends to read the origin story and to digest it together and integrate it together. That's always a fun way to do it. Or we actually are going to be putting our own 12-week book study, one for each of the chapters, and we're going to start that in January. So we wanted to talk about that too for you. And so we have the origin story workbook and the origin story that we're going to start with. Now, as you may remember, when we talked to Tobi the last time, she is a channel, an intuitive, an artist, all kinds of stuff. She reads tarot. But one of the special things to me, the special gifts that you have, Tobi, is this ability to channel light language in writing. It's symbolism, symbolic, beautiful drawings that hold energy and meaning for people. And you can, of course, order those, which would be a great Christmas gift if you're interested. And we'll have her information in the description. But with that, this was sort of how those sigils came about in the book. Mm-hmm. So as we were channeling, it occurred to me that I wanted to have a little symbol at the top of each chapter, like we did for Love Notes, which was the giraffe, just as a decorative thing. And so we were looking for some emojis and some little galactic stuff.
Right. Like little
decoration.
Icons. And it just, nothing. I mean, everything that I kind of came up with and tried to fit it in there, it just didn't feel right as we were assembling the book.
Right. And at some point, I don't remember who got the idea, but to maybe try to do a little light language sigil. And of course, Tobi was the first one to come into my mind. And so I reached out to you about that. And do you remember what you had already you had just channeled one of them and you didn't know why, right?
Yes. And I didn't even realize what it was at first. I had seen this sigil or symbol in my meditation. I had drawn it. And I knew I was guided to share it in some form. And oftentimes with my social media posts, I'll take the written channelings, like the messages I receive, and I overlay it on top of a photograph that I've taken. So I attempted to do that with this sigil, but it wasn't, I knew I was missing something. I knew that wasn't really, excuse me, it wasn't really the purpose of it and what it was meant for. So when you called, then I finally put it together. I was like, now I know what this is and why I've had it for, it was probably 2 or 3 months that I had.
Was it that long?
Yeah. And I wasn't really sure. I knew there was something that was going to happen with it, but I didn't know what it was.
And do you remember who that was?
The Sirians.
Right.
Yeah.
Sirians were the first to knock on your door
Yeah.
and say hello. And so I think we channeled about it also at some point. And the 12 told me, yes, we have been communicating with Tobi also. And that, yes, she is supposed to be a part of this book. So that's really fun when that happens. Excuse me. So then at some point, you had called or texted or whatever, and you were getting this idea that you needed to create tarot cards. Because you have a really good friend whose tarot cards that you use that she had created her own.
Yes.
And so you knew this was possible. You're an artist already, and you have all of this material and all of this channeling that needs to get out to people. And so you had this great idea to create these tarot cards. So you reached out to me and you were like, those symbols that I downloaded for the book? I said, yeah. She's like, well, are they proprietary? Are they mine? Are they yours? How's that work? Because I was kind of thinking about using them for some cards, and I'm like, absolutely, they're yours. I mean, you channeled them right in there for the book. It wouldn't make sense for us to say they're copyrighted and to keep them for us. I mean, of course, this doesn't mean that anybody can go and copy that and use that on your own website.
Right.
If you wanted to do that, reach out to us and we'll talk to you about how that might work. To give Tobi credit for that, but they're her symbols. And so, yes, by all means. So we started talking, and as we were talking, and as often happens when you're talking to people about this, you get hooked into this wave of energy, this inspiration, this intuition. And so things just started flowing, and we were like, cards, card deck would be great. You use those symbols and more. And then we were like, I think you said, I feel this third piece, right?
Right. Yeah. Cause I said, it feels like there are 3 parts to this.
Yeah.
The original, the origin story book,
itself,
the cards, and then there's something else. What's the other thing? And we both said
at the same exact time, workbook or journal. Right. Yes, we were both feeling that. So that was neat. And so that was the inspiration for the workbook. And we wanted to get that out. The origin story went out in June, was published in June.
Yes.
We wanted to hurry and get the workbook out, closer before the end of the year, really, because we wanted people to be able to have it right away so they could use it with the origin story book. And so you spent, I don't know how many hours channeling. And not just, and these are not just little sigils. These are big, and I'm going to show you one in a minute. You guys get to see this before all of the other people that haven't bought the workbook yet. But they're big kind of designs, like half-page designs, and they came with verbal transmissions or translations, if you will, that are very poetic. And if you have the workbook, you'll notice that they are written like poetry.
Yeah.
So you have to actually think as you're reading. And we talked about this. Do you remember?
We did. Yes. Because we talked about like the
flow of it and
punctuation and that type of thing. And the way it was delivered to me was in that more flowing and poetic form.
Yeah, right.
When I write things down, I always make sure that I stay true to that feeling, that flow, and the energy that came through originally with it. So.
And interestingly, because I'm kind of the editor of the workbook itself, putting it all together. And so when you were sending those sigils and those transmissions through, well, they came in on a Word document. So I'm just pulling them off a Word document. I'm like, well, this doesn't line up right. Let me just put it all back together. So Allison would look at it. She said, no. You need to have it just as she sent it, because that's the way it was transmitted. I'm like, well, that doesn't look, she said, no, it's meant to be that way, as in like a poem format, that kind of, there's energy behind each one of those lines. And I said, got it. Okay. So, because I didn't, at first, when you look at it, it's like, okay, this doesn't line up.
It looks weird.
It does look weird, but then once you understand the process, then it was easier to, okay, this makes complete sense. So.
And so what's so funny is I'm such a grammar Nazi. I mean, I have this, maybe you guys can relate out there, but I have this knack or curse. I don't know what you would call it.
Curse.
To see,
from my end, it's a curse.
To see some kind of grammatical error, and it's like bing, 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 whether it's on a billboard or on a newspaper or wherever it is, it stands out to me. And so as I'm reading that, I'm like, we really need some punctuation here. I can't read it in the way that I'm used to reading sentences. But then it occurred to me that it slows you down.
Mhm.
And it's meaningful. And so when you stop and read each line, and it's like sometimes if you're reading sentence after sentence, you get to the end of the paragraph, you don't remember what you read, right? Because it's sort of just you're on autopilot.
It flows, yeah.
Mhm.
But when that's not the case and you have to actually pay attention as you're reading, it really is more meaningful. And I'll tell you what, those symbols, the picture symbols too, ooh, they're really energetic. And the nice thing is we were able to do color on the workbook, which we weren't able to do on the origin story. They had to be all in black. But the sigils are in color this time. In fact, the whole workbook is in color.
Yep.
All right. So do you want to do a sneak peek?
We can.
Show one of them. You can even show the Sirian or whichever one you feel called to do. One of the symbols and
Let's see here. Which one?
the verbal light language.
Let's see.
Excuse me.
Oh, let's go. Which one is drawing my attention here? That's an interesting one, I think. Which one is that?
Mhm.
Oh, it is the Sirians. Ah,
Oh, well, there you go.
there you go. So for those that remember from the origin story itself, that's the symbol for the Sirians
For their chapter.
For
So we
their
put all of the
chapter.
originals in the workbook
Yep,
as well.
as part of the beginning chapter.
And those are in color too. So you get to see
Yes.
the original color that
Yes.
they were drawn.
Because
or
Tobi
painted
she draws with colored markers. And so they did have color in their original form.
And then here on the page, that's the Sirian light language symbol that came through along with the channel transmission that goes along with the sigil. So,
Getting
Yep.
a view of the next one too.
well, that's, the beginning of the new chapter. So,
Right,
yep.
right. So the neat thing about the workbook is that we went through and we encapsulated some of the most important concepts that are the biggest takeaways from each of the chapters so that you kind of preload yourself as you're reading the chapter. And then when you get done with the chapter, you can go back and look at those key concepts and say, hey, did I get all of that?
So key
Right.
concepts are outlined right at the beginning of the new chapter, and they're all highlighted within the.
And
in
that
the
was really
couple of
hard,
blocks.
really hard to do because everything in the chapter is important. I
Right.
mean, like
Very hard to
literally
narrow down.
every sentence is
Yes.
energetic and important.
Yes.
But what we found was when Tobi went through the book and when I went through the book, we came up with almost all the same key concepts. And so that
Mhm.
was reassuring.
Mhm.
There's also room for note taking in there.
Yep.
And then we had some discussion questions. So if you were to do a book study or something like that, there's some questions to apply the material that is in there.
Mhm.
So like the Arcturians will give information or advice or something, and then you just kind of contemplate how that is applicable to your own life or
Right.
how that might benefit you.
Kind
Or,
of everyday
Mhm.
actionables.
right. So for those who want to take it to the next level and actually apply and integrate the material in there.
Yeah.
But as we said, we're going to do a 12-week book study starting in January on the 7th, and it's going to go for every single Sunday for 12 Sundays in a row. We'll end before Easter. For those of you who still celebrate Easter, we didn't want to take up Easter Sunday, of course. And it'll be 2 hours from noon Eastern time until 2 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday. But we'll record it because sometimes something happens and you can't meet with us online, but you'll have access to the entire 2-hour meeting.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about each of the chapters. We're going to talk about our feelings or what were our thoughts as we were reading the chapter. We're going to go through some of the discussion questions, and we're actually going to do a channeling at the very beginning of each meeting.
Mhm.
So Will's going to bring forth that group from that chapter for a group message that's pertinent just for the members of the book study, a timely message for just that group. At the end of each meeting, we're going to actually meditate on the sigils, do a group meditation, something that will carry us through the next week. So it's going to be really intimate, a small group gathering. And for those who are ready to go in depth, I think it's going to start your 2024 off with a bang, literally, because just reading the book, we're getting so much feedback.
Mhm.
You've sold a bunch yourself. Have you been
Mhm.
getting some feedback?
I have.
What are people?
That they're excited about the workbook in
Mhm.
addition to, because having that extra tool to be able to digest the information, they're taking it slow and in certain, smaller pieces, going chapter by chapter. But
it isn't like a novel where you read from cover to cover. You've got to break it up. You've got to digest it. You've got to take time in certain sections. So
there's so much energy within the book too, that sometimes I think and I would say probably for most people that are drawn to it, they are sensitive to energy too, that there's that component as well, which I think adds to the sensation of it being dense, so to speak, not dense as in low or vibrational or anything not at all, but dense as in there's so much to take in and so much to process. And I think a lot of that is the energy that just is held within the words and the channelings, the information.
It's going to be interesting because for full disclosure, I have not read the book, so it's going to force me to read every single chapter. I've read a couple of chapters. I think I've gotten 3 chapters in. And that was on our flight from
we're on the flight sitting next to each other. He's reading it and he would just keep stopping. He's like, oh my God, I said this? This came out of my mouth.
This came out of my mouth. I mean, come on.
And I said, I told you. Every time we would get done with a channeling, I'm like, holy cow, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I'm jumping around. And
I'm just as excited as I think everybody to get into the meat of this and really understand what's there, because it's going to be, I think, just as profound as it was for myself to do the channeling and understanding the energy that was coming through, not knowing what was coming through, but understanding the energy that was there. Now to overlay that with the words that actually came through is going to be just, to me, it's going to be mind blowing. So,
And for those of you who join us, you get 2 authors, real channeled material live. You get meditations and the sigil work and all of this fun
stuff. Wait, there's more.
But this is not meant. I know, before you comment, this is an infomercial. It kind of is. Only because we wanted to make sure that enough people hear about this 12-week book study that's coming up.
Right.
In case you want to take advantage of the early bird discount. The early bird will run through December 15th. So if you pay before midnight on the December 15th, you get the discounted price. You can ask for it for Christmas if you want, put that on your list. And we hope to see you in January. But we also wanted to talk about the infomercial part is done. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
At any rate, we wanted to talk about this. There's something going on with bees, with bee energy, the bee
energy. Yeah, the bee energy for sure.
If this is happening to you, or you have some connection to bees, honey, hives, honeycomb, community, that sort of thing, let us know in the comments. We're fascinated if this is a theme for you all, but it's been a theme for us.
Yes.
So here's what happened. We're downtown Charleston, going to Theater 99.
Last Saturday evening.
Right.
And Theater 99 is a improv studio that we have here in Charleston. It's a great place to go. So if anybody's in Charleston, have at it.
Right. So as an aside, I was getting over the crud. I had the crud for like 3 weeks and I still had a lingering cough. And I'm like, you know what? If I go into this theater of people and I start hacking and coughing, they're going to be upset. So I said, Will, take a detour over to the CVS. I'm going to get some old school Robitussin, swigged it in the car. Luckily, I was okay.
Yeah.
As soon as it starts.
As soon as the lights go down and the performance begins, my eyes, and now I think I've mentioned this in the past on previous podcasts, kind of my history of law enforcement. I have been pepper sprayed. I've had to be pepper sprayed for part of my law enforcement training. I know what that feels like. This is exactly what it felt like. My eyes started burning to the point at which I couldn't see. I mean, literally, water was running out of my eyes and I couldn't clear it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't focus. But I had to sit I couldn't get up in the middle of the performance to go to the bathroom to wash my eyes out or anything. So I had to wait until the right moment, but it was just so uncomfortable.
It was weird because there was no perfume that I smelled, nothing to trigger it, odors.
It was very, very strange. Never had that ever happen before. And then that lasted into the morning. And when we came home that night, I washed my eyes out, went to bed, had a headache at that point because it was just that profound. And then I woke up that morning and I felt like just completely spatially like almost disconnected. Like
Oh, yeah.
like my eyes weren't watering, but now I just felt spatially disconnected. I was just like, what in the heck?
Right.
What's going on? So
And
there
that
had
was
to have
Sunday.
been some sort of, right, that would have been a Sunday. There had to have been some sort of energy clearing, purging, something that took place that night.
Mhm.
So that was Sunday morning when you woke up.
Right.
Sunday night, we've told you that we have a group of 14 of us that meet together every Sunday night, galactic group, and Tobi's a part of that group. And so we got on the group, and we always bounce these things off of each other. You have to have a tribe. Hopefully you all have a tribe that you can meet with and talk about these kinds of things. So you, number one, think you're not crazy, and two, to figure out patterns that are happening in the community. So we mentioned it to some people, and our friend Michelle, who's also in the group, she said, well, that's funny because Tobi just called me this week. And what were you guys talking about?
My eyes being very swollen,
right?
And like super puffy. And I had experienced that in the past with food allergies, but as the energies have changed and my body has changed and all the things that happen with that process, now I'm not sensitive to certain things, those things that were causing my eyes to swell. But now I've noticed that it'll happen. I haven't really narrowed it down, but it happens with fluctuations in energies. And oftentimes it seems to be around things releasing. And we had talked about at that time that it was being able to see the higher perspective and being able to see oneself clearly too. Especially like within a community, and see one's role within a community clearly, and being authentic in that way, which then ties to the bees.
Right. So Michelle was telling us about that situation, and both of those responses are a histamine kind of issue, right? And that could be triggered by a bee sting or something similar, correct? Or eating honey or eating something that you were allergic to. And so, but then Michelle says that she had a bunch of things happening that week or that weekend about bees and honey. I don't know. I think she went to, she was a presenter somewhere, and the person next to her, do you remember this? Was selling honey or whatever it was.
Oh, yes.
So there were just a couple of other bee links and honey links and things like that. Right. And then she looks at me and she goes, you realize that your origin story workbook has the honeycomb pattern on there. I'm like, what? Show the honeycomb pattern again. That was on that page that has the
integration, or not the integration, but the key concepts. So the key concepts.
Now, when I picked that pattern, I was just looking for something exciting, something, visually appealing for that section. And it didn't even occur to me, because it was kind of like sacred geometry, but it didn't occur to me that it looked like the honeycomb pattern.
Right, honeycomb or honey.
So Michelle says this, and then I'm like, oh my God, what is going on with the honey thing? Well, anyway, so we did a meditation that night, Sunday night, and it was about, who was it that led us? Kathy.
Yeah.
Kathy led us through it, and here her guides helped her to walk us all through a meditation where we saw ourselves in separate combs of the honeycomb.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we were practicing tuning into other people's energies, but we were all in our own honeycomb. But the point was that we were each individuals, but that we were part of a community, right? So the theme was about community versus individuality, seeing the higher perspective. I guess there's many, many themes. If you guys can think of other themes that the bees represent, let us know.
Prior to going live, start the recording of this, I said, well, the aspect of the honeycomb is nourishment. So, even with whatever you might gain out of the book or the workbook or anything else that you're immersed in right now, it's to have that perspective of nourishment. What is your energetic aspect needing right now? What nourishment is it needing? And honor that and fulfill it for sure.
But there is something about this idea of community. Have you been getting any of that this week, or in any of your meditations or channelings?
Yes. And it goes back to, and I've had it in my personal life too, this theme of where do you fit? Where do you, meaning me, where do I fit within this community? And then being authentic in that role, even when other people, like, with their actions are pushing boundaries, encroaching, and that type of thing, but making sure that I'm staying in integrity to what my truth is. And it does come back to this idea of, like, the energetic sight of, can you see how this might be pushing your boundaries, or how this is not aligned with you? And then, so if that's the case, do you still fit within that community, or do you not?
Right.
Or does it mean that your role within that community is shifting? And because I was thinking about with the bees, like, each type of bee, they have a very specific role.
Right.
Right.
They don't vary from that.
Yeah.
But without each of them having that very specific role, the hive can't thrive.
Right.
So
we each have to play our own specific role, but we have to be authentic in that role that we're playing.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Which is why we all have different gifts.
Yeah.
And so we can't lament the fact, like I did for many years, because I'm upfront and honest with y'all. How come my gift can't be as visible as Will's? Like, he's channeling, his gifts are obvious. My gifts are not as obvious. And there was a lot of self-doubt there, but whatever your gift is, you're contributing to the greater whole, and your piece is critical. Every single person is a unique entity, and their role is critical. Whether you are staying at home and providing energy to the collective of love, holding that space for love, for the energy to come down and help us to form the new earth, or whether you're out there, you're one of the activists fighting and trying to clear the evil and all of that sort of stuff. So no matter what your role is, it's important.
But I think today was interesting because we had a client earlier this morning, and immediately after the client session, as we were wrapping things, as we got off the Zoom call and you were getting up into your thing, you mentioned that you had this vision of yourself doing kind of what I'm doing, meaning dropping into channel and
call that out.
Well, no, because it leads into the aspect of honoring and fulfilling that aspect of yourself, that role, right? And I think that's the role that you're fulfilling. You might not be fulfilling it in a spoken channeled aspect, but when you drop in during a session to facilitate the session, you are, but now it's evolving. So now it's honoring that. It's honoring that push. And I think many of us were feeling pushed in certain directions. We're feeling led into certain directions to take our gifts or our, whatever you want to call it, to the next level. But yet we hold ourselves back because we don't know what we're doing. We don't feel comfortable doing what we're doing.
Right. Or the physicality is throwing roadblocks, perceived roadblocks that we are using as excuses.
Yes.
Just like, it wasn't just this morning, but many clients.
Yeah.
Like, they're afraid to step completely, fully into this because of finances.
Yeah.
They feel like they need to keep, and you feel that way, I feel that way, right?
Yes.
But I think part of that is that we do need to hold the light in whatever entity we're in.
But it's honoring ourselves. So if you're any of you that are out there are feeling like, I know there's something that I'm being drawn to. Well, it doesn't mean you have to go and leave something to go into something.
Right.
Remember, be like a child, be like a kid, that picks up a coloring book for the first time and starts scribbling in it. That's the energy that you're looking at. You're looking at something new that's in front of you. Play with it, giggle with it, just enjoy the heck out of it. Then in time, you'll come to understand how you're going to use this in your everyday practice or everyday life. So it's not to figure out
baby steps, taking baby steps out in faith, right?
Yeah. And those are so important. And we tend to look at them sometimes, I think, as like baby steps. But when you think about, I don't remember where I heard someone say this, but when a baby takes their first step, it's wobbly. They fall down. They don't go very far.
They're not running the marathon.
People around are like cheering like crazy. Everybody's super excited.
And they weren't afraid of being embarrassed.
No.
Right.
And even the ones where they fall down and they crack their, bum or face or whatever are just as important as the ones where they're running the marathon. So
right.
I think that's important for all of us to remember when we're starting out on things.
Yes.
And that, following the gifts can be really uncomfortable too.
Oh yeah.
That it's probably not going to feel.
You're going to be wobbly. You're going to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
You're going to fall on your face.
Right.
I mean,
Because if you were already an expert, you wouldn't need to practice.
That's right.
Right.
But I mean, just knowing you for the short span that we've known you from that first meeting at that holistic fair to now, look at the baby steps you've taken and look at now the sprint that you're on. So it happens quite rapidly as long as you can get out of your own way. Right. And that's, I think, the biggest aspect of that is getting out of your own way, because we'll get in our own way if we allow it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me too, it's not a constant thing, but it's something that I'm always aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's oftentimes we see other people doing things and we feel like, oh, they're doing it with no problem. They don't have any second thoughts. They don't have any anxiety over it. They don't worry about not getting it wrong, not getting it right. They don't have imposter syndrome, but they probably do.
But
they're doing it anyway. So
they're probably thinking the same thoughts that you're thinking.
Exactly.
Right. Yes,
exactly.
yes.
And that's important for people to recognize too, that we all have those thoughts and there's nothing to not judge ourselves for having them.
I absolutely went through that when I first started channeling. Within the first, I'll say, year and a half of channeling, it's hard not to compare yourself to some of the other channelers, some of the other, big channelers out there. And it gets humbling very quickly when you realize that you're doing something that not many people do. And then there are many people that are extremely profound and they've made a big name for themselves. And you're like, well, I don't know. I'd like to get there, but what are they doing that I'm not doing? That kind of thing. And, or am I really doing what they're doing? And you go through this whole mental exercise that ends up crippling you basically. And you start doubting yourself, you start doubting what you're doing. But then realization kicks in and you get to a point of going, no, this is really who I am. I can't deny what I'm doing because I can see the profound outcomes. And now I'm just going to set aside that thought of everybody else that does this and focus on my craft, my ability, and refine that to the point of being the best that I can be, being the most authentic I can be, and providing the client the most, the most of myself during the session. So
right. And when we do that and we're focused on ourself and our own alignment with source, we're too busy doing our thing to worry about anybody else or judge anybody else. Right.
That's a very good.
And the other interesting thing is that people overall are really too self-absorbed to be thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you.
We're all thinking about ourselves.
Right.
So all those people you think are judging you and worrying about what you're wearing,
they're judging themselves,
what you're eating. Yes, they're self-absorbed. Trust me. Anyway, I want to get back to something that we kind of alluded to, and this is this idea of community. And as we move into the new earth and we evolve, I think there's a misconception. And at some point, Michaela Sheldon beautifully encapsulated this a while back. And that's really the only person I've seen address this. But I think we have this idea that as we evolve into the fifth dimension, that we're all going to become more similar. That when we become one, or because we're all one, we're all going to be identical. Meaning there are a lot of stereotypes about people in the metaphysical community, that they all do yoga, that they're vegan, perhaps, that they know certain things about certain things. We sometimes even think they're all Democrat, or they all think the same way or vote the same way or do the same things. Right. And
wear the same clothes or
meditate all the time.
Right. And you know what? The evolution is not about becoming more similar. It is about retaining our individuality, but being unified within those individual pieces. So this was really interesting. Who was it we were talking to that was channeling I was watching this on a channeler who channels the Pleiadians, and her team was a collective of Pleiadians, 2,500 of them, essentially, and her soul was a part of it. Excuse me. And they explained that although they're a collective, they can individualize also. So each can have their own experience while still being part of this collective. And that's where we're headed. So it isn't about us all becoming similar, more similar, thinking the same way to agree, but we're going to be able to find common ground amongst the differences. So does that make sense?
It does. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about being self-absorbed in a way too, because what I think gets removed is judgment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
right.
we each are able to follow our own path and have our own experience. And we're doing it while not judging anyone else for theirs, and where it does differ from ours and where.
Yeah.
Right. So, some people find, like, if you think one way and you think another way, we feel like that's going to cause conflict automatically. Right. And that the only way to overcome that conflict is you either have to come to my side and believe what I believe, or I have to come to your side and believe what you believe.
And if you don't listen to me, I'm going to get louder, and then you're going to get louder, and we're both going to be loud, and we're not going to get anywhere.
Or that we should compromise to the point of giving up our belief so that it's just to keep the peace.
Right.
That's not what the new earth is all about. It is about, like you said, that's exactly right. Not judging anyone else's belief system, understanding there can be 8 billion different perspectives, one for each person on the planet. Right. There are 8 billion perspectives.
There are.
And they're all okay.
Yeah.
Because we all signed a different contract and came in to accomplish something different or experience something different. Not the same thing. So there's no way that we could all agree.
I think you bring up a good point. I think the biggest learning curve for myself over the last 3-4 years was just that. It's coming to that comfortable place of knowing that everybody has their own contract and they're living their own truth. They're living their contract just the way they've, scripted it or put it out for themselves, just as I'm living my own contract, my own script. And when you can come to that point of being okay with that, then an errant disagreement with someone else that has a different belief system, a different understanding of that, I come at it, or I look at it, or I feel it in a much different way. I can step back and go, okay, they're onto something that I haven't been introduced to. So instead of, it might go against everything I believe. It might even go against what I'm doing in my craft. But if I can, look across and be there with them and understand, hey, we're both living our contract. We're both living our journey out equally. Right. Let's learn from each other instead of fight against each other, or so I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of a thought that's rolling around in my head, but it
does make sense.
Yeah, it is that comfortable place of knowing that everybody is here doing something that they're meant to be doing. And
it is liberating not to judge other people anyway, because then it's not your worry. You don't have to worry about it. Like they say, not my circus, not my monkeys. That's exactly right.
That is it.
It isn't.
That's what I was seeing about the contract aspect too.
Yeah.
It's very liberating, I feel, to get to that point of accepting that, because along with that, with when there is the contrast between us and another person or us in a situation, then it's about what our soul wanted to learn in that experience, but also what the other soul wanted to learn in that experience, and our part in helping that other soul learn what they're meant to learn. And so it's really
because when you get to a point at which you're standing in front of somebody, well, that didn't happen by accident.
Right.
That did not happen
whether
by
you
accident.
Agree or don't agree.
Right. Yes. You might think, oh my God, that was just accidental that I happen to be, that I happen to meet this person at the coffee shop. No. That was written a long time ago. So,
or you might be thinking, why in the hell is this person in my life? Right. Why did I intersect with this person?
It's just as much for them as it is for you.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you take it back to the contract and just remember that, it is so much easier to just let it go. Let it go, as they say, right? Let it go. We're going to let it go. I have to do that a lot with my children.
Next on the halftime show, Dr. Allison Brown. Oh.
You didn't know I could sing, did you? But releasing control of one's children when they fly the coop for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was a hard lesson. It didn't take me too long, but it was a hard lesson.
Well, I mean, it's not like our children at the age of, 18 or 17 left and went to college immediately. No, our children actually stayed around for
they gave us time to get used to it.
The runway was quite long on our children at the house. So, which I am
we didn't mind at all.
Absolutely fine with. I mean, our son is still at the house, and he likes to travel. He likes to, explore the world. So he needs a place to, call home. So, he doesn't want to, root himself into an apartment or a house just
when
yet.
He's not there 75% of the time.
Right. So, and he feels bad at times. Oh, I don't want to mooch. You're not mooching. Look, you got a stable place. You got a room. Enjoy it. There'll be plenty of times that we'll be mooching off of you when we come to visit. So,
or when we're old and
right,
it works out.
Exactly. It all balances out.
But I think this, I wanted to bring all of that up because it ties in with this idea of community and the collective and the honeycomb aspect and the bees, how they are in community. And like you said, each role is vital. If they were all the same, like you said, there would be no honey being made.
That's right.
Right.
Because you'd either have all queens or all worker bees and whatever. And and you're doomed.
Yeah.
I was trying to think back when we talked to the bees. They were the first collective that we actually channeled for the Love Notes book. Fascinating conversation. Their energy is so gentle and beautiful and loving. And one of the questions I asked, which this is really funny, I love this. I said, physicists, human physicists, say that your body is really too big to get you off the ground with the wings that you have. How is it that you fly, and how does this work? They said to me, we really don't spend a lot of time thinking about that, because if we did, we might never fly. And I thought,
how profound is that for our lives?
Yes.
Right? Is that not something we can learn from? If we keep thinking about the reasons we shouldn't be able to or can't do something, you would just never even attempt it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just stuck with me. It was the most beautiful.
That really is.
Right?
That's really.
So really pick up a copy of that for Christmas if you haven't already. I mean, that one is just chock full of wisdom from the animals, the collectives, all of the pet sessions that we've done. We're not doing another infomercial, I promise, but the bee information was really, really, really good. And the wasps and the snakes and the rats and all of the fun animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fun romp, pre-Christmas romp through the origin story and the bees. And we really want to hear from you guys. If you picked up the workbook, how are you enjoying it? How are you using it? Let us know. If you have bee experiences, particularly in the past month or so, let us know what's happening with you and what are your thoughts about it? What kind of information or intuition are you getting about that? Yeah. And if you are interested, sign up for the 12-week book study prior to December 15th, which I don't know. Is that Saturday? Excuse me.
Well, you're putting
Friday or Friday. Okay.
Friday.
So Friday at midnight for the early bird, but you still can sign up all the way until a couple of days prior if you want to, and put that on your Christmas list. We would love to see some of our, I know there's at least one person that's a frequent viewer that has signed up, and I look forward to her being a part of our group. And we would love to see some of you all that have been with us for a while and commenting. It would be really fun to see your faces on Zoom and get to know you a little bit better. And you're obviously drawn to this information for a reason. So I think that would add to the collective cohesion, the collective learning, because heaven knows we're going to be learning from you all.
Absolutely.
As much as you're learning from us, we're learning together. We're collaborating and integrating together. So again, thank you so much for joining us. All of those links that you need are going to be in the description box. Check out Tobi Elbel too if you need some other Christmas gift ideas. A sigil for somebody for Christmas is a beautiful way to honor them. Anything
Absolutely.
else you want to say about your products or your?
Well, the 2024 light language sigil reading, I'm offering a reading and that goes along with a channeled sigil for the year of 2024 for
nice.
you. So it'll be a touchstone is the word I was given for it, something to go back to, refer to connect into with the activations. And then so you'll receive that, a reading that explains how that will assist you throughout the year. And then there will be a meditation as well that will help you to connect into the sigil that you can add to your rituals through your regular ritual or just whenever you feel called to do it through the year.
I know we were going to wrap up, but I have a question now.
Sure.
When you get these sigils, does the group that's providing it tell you who it is, or is it just your guides, or is it their guides, or who is it that's providing this information?
It depends. It depends on the person. And it depends on, trying to think of how to put this into words. I think it just depends on the individual. And it depends on how their energy is at the time, whether it's my guides coming through or their guides coming more towards me. Because I see it as like this way, you know, like whether, which direction it's coming from more.
And are you able to tell them that at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Not, and I'm kind of hesitating because most people don't ask. So I haven't really thought about
the mechanism.
The mechanism.
You're right.
I might be treading in an area I shouldn't be. Sorry.
It's interesting for me to think about, but that's why it takes me a little bit to put it into words, because I'm like, okay, wait, how does that happen?
And I'll say, you know, for me, I'm kind of a diagnostician at heart. So I like to know the mechanisms and the understandings of how things function. So even with my channeling, it took me a while to understand that mechanism of dropping in and who am I connecting to at first, or what group am I, you know, and all this. And once I had that understanding, then when this little twitch would happen or that little thing would happen as I'm going in, then I know. And it adds, for me, it adds a layer of
comfort, maybe
comfort. Of knowing, okay, everything is kicking itself off.
Validation.
Exactly.
Of knowing. Yes. Yeah. And I get this similar type things like body sensations, and different parts of my body represent different guides for me, or different aspects, or even mediumship. There's a specific feeling I get with that. It's very interesting, but it's definitely like a process of figuring out like what am I feeling now? You know, so it's interesting.
And it's evolving. Yeah. For sure.
And I'm curious how that works for you. Like you obviously set aside time because you sit down with your paper and your pens and the person's name and all of that, I imagine. And then do you sit and tune into your heart space? Do you kind of astral project yourself? How does that work when that information comes in?
If I'm doing it remotely for someone or at a different time when they're not physically present or we're not over Zoom, I've asked for an image of their face and I connect into their eyes.
Oh yeah.
And so that is kind of it's the portal that I use for connecting into their energy. And that's
cool.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. You guys got to get one. I'm telling you. But at any rate, we thank you guys so much for spending your time with us. And we have another podcast before Christmas, I believe.
I think so. I'm not at this point. I'm not going to guess because I was.
We don't have a calendar in front of us, but the one between Christmas and New Year's, the Wednesday before New Year's,
that's right,
is going to be our blooper reel. We previewed it already just to make sure it was okay. Nothing bad.
It's what's the there's an award that goes out to like media and stuff, Grammys or Emmys or something like that, or
Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, maybe Rotten Tomatoes would be a good one. I don't know. It's definitely worthy. I don't know. If I may say so myself. So
it is really good. You guys have to watch it, and you need to watch it. By the way,
yes. This episode.
Don't just listen.
I know that many of you might just put our podcast out on the limb and just listen to it through your headphones as you're going about your daily business or driving or something like that. please, this one, sit down and actually watch, because
it's funnier
it's
when
a
you
lot
watch
of
it.
behind the scenes prior to we actually, what you guys actually see or listen to on the Out on the Limb podcast episodes. So it's everything kind of behind the scenes and a lot of antics that take place.
And it gets funnier and funnier as it goes, with a big crescendo at the end. Trust me.
Yes.
So until next time, guys, thanks for being with us on the Podcast.